Tell me if this sounds familiar. You react the way people expect you to, instead of how you actually feel. You stay too quiet, careful about what you say. You take everything personally. You lash out when criticized and withdraw from social situations. You feel terrible about always being late, missing calls, struggling to keep up, and just not functioning the way you're supposed to. This is ADHD shame. And it's not just an emotional burden. It rewires your brain. It makes you more prone to rejection, self-doubt, and burnout. It kills your focus and motivation, making an already hard life feel impossible. Wait, this actually affects my focus? Yeah, you heard that right. The moment ADHD shame kicks in, your limbic system hijacks your brain. It takes over the part of your brain responsible for focus, impulse control, planning, and emotional regulation. And guess what? That's the same part of your brain that's already impaired by ADHD. So what happens when an impaired system gets even more impaired? You lose control completely. You panic, you overthink, you spiral into self-doubt, you disconnect from the world. You check out mentally, emotionally too. You numb yourself, disassociate, distract, and suddenly you're trapped, unable to move forward. Research shows that shame is the most isolating and paralyzing emotion we face. It convinces you that you'll never change, that you'll never do better. And it's directly linked with addiction, violence, aggression, depression, eating disorders, and self-harm. It's that feeling when someone calls you lazy, too much, or uninterested. You know what I'm talking about. Time slows down. Your mouth goes dry. And over time, you start to believe it. And that leads to a wasted life. But there is a way out. To feel calm, grounded, and in control again. To stop procrastinating, stop spiraling, and finally focus on what actually matters. We've talked about how to be productive with ADHD on this channel. But how do we actually live a happy life? Not just with work, not just with relationships, but most importantly, with ourselves. Let's break it down in 3 steps. By the way, I'm Nick, founder of ADHDVision, a community of over 3.5 million followers across all platforms. I was diagnosed with ADHD 7 years ago, and since then, I've not only mastered it myself, but helped millions do the same. Today, I run a business built around empowering ADHD minds to thrive instead of just survive. So, if you have ADHD, consider subscribing. Because these 3 steps, they changed my life. Step 1. Imagine your nervous system is like a road. Neurotypical people have a wide highway with multiple lanes, allowing them to handle different levels of stress, distractions, and emotions without getting overwhelmed easily. If a sudden stressor, like an unexpected deadline or a frustrating conversation appears, they have enough space to navigate around it and keep on moving. But if you have ADHD, your nervous system is more like a narrow road with fewer lanes. There's less flexibility to handle stressors smoothly. So, when something disruptive happens, like a change in plans, an overwhelming to-do list, or an emotional trigger, it's much easier to feel stuck in traffic or completely shut down. And so your window of tolerance, the range of emotions and stress levels you can comfortably manage, is much smaller. As a result, you might go from feeling fine to completely dysregulated, frustrated, anxious, or completely unfocused much faster than a neurotypical person would in the same situation. And after getting diagnosed, it took a long time for me to realize that shame is at the epicenter of this. It literally makes life with ADHD 10 times worse. Over the years, I realized it not only convinces you that you're broken, but it also keeps you stuck in a cycle of self-doubt, avoidance, and dysregulation. What does this mean practically? Well, say you make a mistake. You forget someone's name. That happened to me 2 hours ago. Shame makes you think, I am a mistake. It's all-encompassing. You tell yourself you're never going to change. So how do we stop it? Well, it starts with a simple shift. First off, it's understanding that you are not the problem. shame is. Instead of saying, I am a failure, try, I made a mistake. Because let's be honest, one bad moment doesn't define you. And so the antidote to shame is self-compassion. I know, right? What's that? I had to look it up too. Apparently, it's the practice of treating yourself with kindness, understanding, and support, especially in moments of failure, struggle, or suffering. Never heard of it. But apparently the moment you replace shame with self-compassion, you reconnect with yourself. And that changes everything. Because suddenly, your nervous system calms down. And you move back into your window of tolerance. Okay, but how do we do that? Well, as a rule of thumb, whenever a thought or that nasty feeling of shame comes up, we can learn to ask ourselves, would I say this to someone I love? Would I say this to a friend? And if the answer is no, how would you rephrase the thought? This is how we can begin shifting from self-judgment to self-acceptance. But to truly break free from shame so that we can focus, connect, and regulate ourselves again, we need to go even deeper. We need to develop shame resilience. We need to actually check in with these thoughts, write them down, and reality check them. I know, sounds tedious, but hear me out. Once we check our thoughts and check what expectations they come with, if they're realistic, attainable, and aligned with what you actually want, we often realize they're definitely not. When I wrote down my thoughts for the first time, I realized that my brain apparently wants me to be Bradley Cooper from Limitless without the pills 24/7. I mean, I like the movie, but I gotta be honest, that sounds pretty exhausting. But then I learned something about why we have such high expectations of ourselves. A lot of us with ADHD do this to protect ourselves. Apparently, being a perfectionist is armor for us to shield off feeling pain, judgment, and shame. At its core, it's about trying to gain approval. We use it to hide our flaws, forgetfulness, impulsivity, whatever symptom it is, and adopted a belief system that I am what I accomplish and how well I accomplish it. And it's exhausting because it's almost like you spend your whole life on the hustle. It's a never-ending performance that you are not putting up for yourself. You mask who you really are. Perfectionism is correlated with anxiety, depression, addiction, and life paralysis. And once you understand this, you can start to develop an understanding for yourself. You're not broken. You don't have to be measured by performance. Your environment conditioned you to be this way, but it doesn't have to keep going like this. And so the first step is to learn and check in with yourself on how realistic your thoughts and expectations about yourself really are, so you can start to develop empathy for yourself. But even then, your brain will continue to hijack you. Especially with ADHD, it's almost impossible to catch all those negative thoughts and beliefs about yourself, right? They build up over years and years, and even if you start doing this right now, your days will still be filled with anxiety, worry, and hopelessness. And so what should you do next? How can you get into your lane, into your window of tolerance long term so you can thrive? Well, here's the truth about shame. It thrives in silence. It grows in the dark. Just like you would need to cough when you're sick, you rid yourself of the shame virus when you speak it out. That's when it starts to lose its grip over you. But ADHD shame can feel like we're carrying this burden that no one else understands, right? I don't want to open up about that. At least I used to feel like this. What helped me was realizing that I'm not alone. In fact, there are hundreds of millions of people with ADHD that are probably going through very similar things. Want proof? Comment down below what you experienced shame in recently. It can be big or small. It can be anything. Take your time. And while you're down there, you may want to also take some time to read through other people's comments. Pause the video if you need to. Just remember to come back. How did that feel? Maybe it was a bit scary. Even if you didn't share, maybe reading a few of those comments led to your shoulders dropping a bit. Maybe your breathing slowed. Maybe life got 0.1% lighter. Why? Because connection moves you back into the window of tolerance and allows you to take control over your brain again. Your fight or flight response slows once you realize that shame is part of the shared human and especially shared ADHD experience. And so after having empathy with yourself, connect with others to see that you're not alone. But now that you've started breaking the isolation, how do you make sure you don't slip back into old habits? You have to start showing up as your real self. That means letting go of perfectionism, fear of judgment, and the need to prove yourself. Because here's what we learned. Perfectionism isn't self-improvement, it's self-protection. It's the mask we wear to avoid criticism, failure, or rejection, and it's exhausting. Many of us with ADHD grew up believing that we are only as valuable as our achievements. That if we just work harder, mask better, and try to fit in, we'll finally feel worthy. But that's not self-growth. That's survival mode. And if you're constantly performing, always trying to be good enough for others, you will never feel good enough for yourself. You'll burn out living in fight or flight mode. The truth is, you don't need to be perfect to be worthy. You don't need to meet impossible expectations to deserve happiness. You just need to start giving yourself permission to be human. That means reality checking your expectations, letting go of standards that were never yours to begin with, choosing self-acceptance over self-punishment. But the real key is vulnerability. And I know that word might make you uncomfortable because you've likely been taught that vulnerability is weakness, that showing emotion is bad because it will hurt when you open up. Too often have we overshared without giving it a second thought, only to get met with rejection, forcing us to crawl back into our shell and put on our armor. Some of us haven't come out since then. But here's the truth. Vulnerability is power. It's how you take control of your life, build real connections, and finally stop hiding from yourself. It's sharing your truth in a way that builds connection, not shame. It's sharing your truth not with everyone, but with the people who have earned the right to hear it. And it's not sharing in absence of fear, but in spite of it. It takes courage, which, plot twist, actually means that showing weakness is a strength. Oh, the irony. What does vulnerability look like in your day-to-day? Well, it's sharing an unpopular opinion, saying no even when it's uncomfortable, asking for help instead of suffering in silence. It's the opposite of people-pleasing. It's putting your mask on first before helping others. And while it can feel uncomfortable, it's the first step to living for yourself, realizing that your worth isn't tied to making others happy. Remember the conversation we had about perfectionism earlier? Well, vulnerability is literally imperfection. And let's be honest, life with ADHD is anything but perfect, right? So knowing that, why are we still so hard on ourselves? I get it. Vulnerability is uncomfortable. I used to believe I could opt out of it. So when something painful happened, a devastating phone call, a terrifying moment of fear, loving someone so much I feared losing them, I controlled everything. I micromanaged people and situations. I kept myself busy so my fear wouldn't catch up to me. I performed until there was no energy left to feel. I looked brave on the outside, but felt scared on the inside. Slowly, I learned that this shield was too heavy to carry. It kept me from knowing myself and letting myself be known. Masks make us feel safer even when they become suffocating. And the longer you keep it on, the harder it'll be to take off and remember what fresh air tastes like. And when I finally let my guard down, when I stopped running from vulnerability, that's when everything changed. It's when I started sharing my ADHD journey over 5 years ago, which attracted some of the best things in my life. It's when I started believing that I was enough. And by the way, you are enough. If you're here listening to this right now, you are worthy of love. I know, you may not believe it, but often to feel like we're enough, we need to start embracing the fact that we've had enough. That we've had enough feelings of pain, anger, worry, anxiety, rage, etc., etc. And so let me ask you, have you had enough? Nice. Same here. So, my challenge to you, Start small. Share one real thought with someone you trust. Set one boundary that puts you first. Say one thing you've been afraid to say out loud. Because every time you choose vulnerability, you choose yourself. And that's the most powerful choice you can make. And so let's get out there and be true to ourselves. Let's say no, set boundaries, and embrace the power of vulnerability. Because this will not only sustainably rewire your brain in the time of stress, it will also widen your window of tolerance, making you more resilient to life than you ever thought possible. But if you're like me, you've probably also had enough of feeling like you're constantly behind and overwhelmed. Like executive paralysis and endless procrastination define you to the core. If that's you, there's actually one more step you need to be aware of. An instant method that shifts you into your window of tolerance immediately without needing to practice vulnerability. No willpower, no discipline, no medication, no hacks either. Just a simple yet scientifically backed strategy that lets you stop procrastinating and unlock focus on command. And here's the thing. This one shift made the biggest difference in my life as an ADHDer. It's what finally gave me consistent progress on what actually mattered. Allowed me to build up this channel as well as my business. It works by using something called curated external triggers. And it's already changing the lives of thousands of ADHDers. If you want to understand how it works and how you can start using it today, watch this free video next. It explains everything in detail.